Hi guys, it is 8:30 or a few seconds before. I'm most excited about teaching today. Last night I was preparing more and I thought, I feel like I want it to be morning already. I get that way about coffee. I'm laying in bed thinking about tomorrow's a new day, which means I can have coffee because I can't have it after like 11 a.m. or I stay up. So sometimes I've laid in bed and thought about coffee. Very spiritual. Waiting for some people to get on. Good morning. I love to see new faces, same faces. Welcome. Mary, Rhonda, Teresa, Adam. I am in the church lobby. And so if you end up hearing anything, it's just because I got here because we're going on a staff field trip today leaving here at 8:45. So I got a little ahead of myself yesterday, and when I was looking at Proverbs 7, I went, oh my goodness, I taught a little bit of Proverbs 7 during Proverbs 6 day. So I apologize if you're reading today or yesterday ahead for Proverbs 7, you went, wait, what's going on? So here's the deal. I talked about the woman who said she prepared her sacrifice and was already forgiven, so her and the man she was luring in could go and let's have sexual relations while my husband is out of town because he's gone until full moon. And I talked about that yesterday. So you might want to catch up yesterday. I won't go back in that today. But what I think is interesting, hey, I love it. What I think is interesting is that this father continues to tell his son. Remember, I talked yesterday, there's 10 speeches from a father to a son. There's 4 poems about Lady Wisdom, all just in chapters 1 through 9. So we're still in those chapters. That there has to be 10 speeches from a father to a son, and it's about sex. He's like, buddy, this is going to be a problem in life. This is going to be a temptation in life. And I think that's because it's modeling what people struggle with in life, all ages. And we get warned. Do you feel like you have been warned about adultery, about the temptation of immorality? Do you feel like, my goodness, Proverbs is about wisdom. Why is there so much about that? And it's all setting us up in the first part of the book, and this is why. Did you know that sexual demons are stronger than any other kind of demon? And I could get into that whole study. I should do a study, share that with you. This is why people can leave their spouse over someone they're having sex with. And it makes no sense. They're leaving their children, they're leaving their spouse. It makes no sense. Sexual demons, and this is why people say they're addicted to pornography, addicted to sex. So I feel like the last 3 days I've brought up sex and immorality, but it's in here, but it's because it is such a powerful stronghold. And it does affect us from the moment we go through puberty, or if someone has abused a person, it predates puberty, which is so sad. And I believe that's why it's such a problem. You know, the statistics of people who've been messed with sexually before the puberty, and honestly just abuse, molestation. The stats are staggering. And why? Because Satan goes, this messes with your soul. Sexual sin is a soul against the body, the flesh, the soul. It's a sin against that. Whereas other sins might be lying as a sin against, another person. You weren't honest, but sexual sin affects you internally, externally, and another person. There's no other sin that is that major. So there is a difference in sins. There are levels and grades of sin, not in what can be forgiven and what can't. God forgives all sin a ton of times. There's no sin too great that he won't forgive. But there are levels of sin that affect us. And there are types of sin that are more controlling long term. And one of those is sexual sin. That's the strongest. And so that's why you just hear it repeated. But this is what I would say. And I talked to you a little in the last few days about how I had a baby at 15 years old, and I began to label myself the screwed up girl. The girl that came from a good family, was in every sport, hung out with the popular kids, and then ruined my life. So I was the wrecked person. So as of 15, I started to wear that label. Then I found Jesus. Then I felt like he might like me and want to use me. I had known Jesus as a kid, but everything changes in high school and your perspective. And I thought maybe he will use me, even though I'd labeled myself a wreck. So I felt his forgiveness. I stepped into that. But then I told you a few days ago when Sean and I lost our first daughter, she lived 18 days, I said, well, it's judgment. So I began to wear the label, I'm judged. I'm being disciplined even now, 15 years later, for my sin, or 12 years later for my sins of the past. And that's not the truth. That's what I was telling myself. So today, the theme of today, I know every day's had a theme. Every day has had like a picture you can remember, whether it's a locket on your forehead or a path, and there's always been a theme. But today's theme is labeling yourself well, not labeling yourself bad, because that's easy. A teacher can label you bad. A spouse, a child can be like, you're a mean mom. And honestly, if my kids were to say that to me, I would take that label, because the negative is so much stronger than the positive. So it's easy to get bad labels. We're going to talk today, Proverbs 7 with a V, about labeling yourself well. In verse 4, it says, say to wisdom, you are my sister, and to insight, you are my relative. We are 7 chapters in. We have heard the wisdom. We've received the wisdom. If we're acting on it, start to label yourself like, oh yeah, me and wisdom, we're tight. When I started to pray after I had the baby at 15, and then people loved it. I mean, I went from getting bullied to like being laughed at. Like, that looks so good on you, Sonny. Look at, you're a screw up. When I just couldn't get through the day by, praying against depression, I went to praying for wisdom. That's how my love for wisdom began. And when I started to just pray for wisdom, I started to get it. And I would hear people say to me, man, you're like 16 going on 30. You're very mature for your age. Have you ever been told you are wise beyond your years? So I was told that Sean and I were youth pastors. I was 20 years old, and some of my kids, actually, we were 19 years old, intern. I was a 19-year-old intern, and some of the kids in our youth ministry were 18 or 19. And it's a good thing I prayed for wisdom, because I had to be wise beyond my years. I want to look young below my years, but I want to have wisdom beyond my years. And so I began to say, I'm praying for wisdom, and I am a woman of wisdom. And when I stepped into that, I started to be wiser. So when it says, say to wisdom, you are my sister, you are my homegirl, and to insight, you are my relative. Label yourself close to wisdom, that you're tight with insight, that you've heard it and you're doing it, therefore you are it. Rather than, well, I'm really trying to read the Bible, but I have a hard time. That is speaking death over yourself. I used to say, I have to leave notes for Sean in our marriage. I used to say, well, I have to wear the pants in the family, because, that was kind of we're northern women. We're pretty strong up here. And so we can be like, oh, I have 3 kids. I have 4 with my husband. Well, no husband is glad you're saying he's your 4th child. Ladies, if you've said that tongue in cheek, you laughed, your friends laughed, your guy awkwardly laughed. It's not really funny to him, and he doesn't really want to have sex with his mom. And so when you say, oh, I have 3 children, 4 with my husband, just delete that from your verbiage. That's a label. That's labeling your husband a child. So when he acts as a child, when he does as a child, when he doesn't take out the garbage, because only children have to be told to do their chores, that's huge. And so I used to be I wear the pants in the family. Well, I'm much younger than Sean. I still say that. I'm 5 years younger than Sean, and, but yet I'm more mature. And boy, I wore that around for the first 10 dysfunctional years of our marriage, that I would leave him sticky notes. I would make sure that I kept him on track. And my label was, I'm in charge. And you know what? He looked at me like his mother. And there's no wonder we had trouble. because I was never meant to be his mom, and honestly, I didn't want to be his mom. And a boy who becomes a man and is married to basically his mom or someone acting as his mom will rebel like a teenage boy who's trying to stretch their arms and get away from mom's grasp. Right now, my son, I'm like, kiss me on the mouth, give me bigger hugs, talk to me. And he loves me, and when it's on his terms, man, he'll come, he wants to hug and he wants to talk, but he's pushing those walls out to go, I'm almost 16, I'm not gonna sit on your lap anymore, Mom. You know, there are boundaries. So then when we do that to our husband, then we wonder why they push away, and we go, what are they pushing away about? Okay, went off on a total rampage, but honestly, I've had people messaging about their marriage during this study that I didn't expect it would bring that up, so maybe that's for someone. This is what I started to label myself, because we're talking about good labels today. I started to label myself, I'm pretty wise. And then I got to where I could be confident enough to go, I'm not being cocky, I'm wise. And then I got to the place where I went, I have discernment. The Bible talks about discernment, where you can walk in a room and you can sense and feel something's off. And that's, I talk about, and if you watch or listen to any of my Jesus Plus Life things, I talk about, and in my book, being the thermostat, not the thermometer, that when I walk in a room and it's ice cold and people are obviously hating each other, we got to change the temperature of that. Or I walk in a room and everybody's heated, we got to cool that baby off. And so that though starts with discerning what's the temperature of the room, of the meeting, of the home. If I walk in my house and I can tell, okay, Sean and the kids just had a serious conversation, do I bring peace, or do I walk in and I just go with the thermostat they've set and I become that temperature? And so I had to say, I have discernment, therefore I can be a thermostat. I went from saying I'm the woman who wears the pants in the family and was just a strong, honestly, a jerk. I wouldn't have wanted to be married to me as I look back. And now I say, I'm joyful. I'm elf. And you know, some days I don't feel like elf. This morning I woke up and I thought, Tuesdays I feel a weightiness, like I feel waking up on Sunday. What is that? And I think that weightiness is that Tuesdays are our staff meeting days. And my role here is for the staff and leadership. And I think that the weight that Sean carries on a Sunday, I would feel very similar to that weight on a Tuesday, because I know that my role is for the Tuesday leadership staff. And so I don't always wake up feeling like Elf. I'm talking the movie Elf, not Alf, as in 1980s cute little, what was he? Yeah, that guy. This is where people will type in what Alf was. He was an alien, I know, but was he an alien?